They call them the fairer sex, but step inside the cage and there's nothing fair about the beatdowns these women deliver. From cemetery knockouts and one-sided beatdowns to absolute bloodbaths live on TV, women's MMA has seen some of the most savage moments in the sport's history. But who are the most brutal female fighters to ever step into the cage? Let's find out. Dakota Ditchava. At first glance, she looks like a Disney princess, a Miss Bikini contestant, or maybe a glamorous ring girl announcing the next round. But don't let the delicate appearance fool you. This Bulgarian-British wrecking machine is one of the most ruthless female fighters to ever step into an MMA cage. Dakota Ditchava just bulldozed her way through the 2024 PFL Women's Flyweight Tournament, capping it off by dismantling former UFC title challenger Taila Santos with cold-blooded precision. From the opening bell, Dakota doesn't waste time nibbling on appetizers. She dives straight into the main course, launching front kicks to the face and chest, carving opponents up with sharp kicks and laser-accurate strikes from range. But her most terrifying weapon? That bone-breaking Muay Thai clinch. Once she latches onto an opponent, it's a horror show. Brutal knees cook their liver, while vicious elbows turn their head into a heavy bag until the referee steps in to end the violence. Her style is relentless, a blend of volume punching and raw knockout power rarely seen in women's MMA. Out of 14 professional fights, the British-Bulgarian assassin has finished 12 by knockout and 1 by submission, making judges about as useful as a prime minister in North Korea. At just 26 years old, barely reaching her prime and boasting a flawless 14-0 record, Ditchava is the brightest rising star in women's MMA. Her sheer brutality in the cage stands in stark contrast to her striking beauty outside of it. Some of her most merciless beatdowns include a 58-second demolition of Hasna Gaber, as well as reminding Cornelia Holm, Chelsea Hackett, Lisa Malden, and Jenna Bishop just how fragile the human torso can be. And of course, there's her one-sided beatdown of Taila Santos, a fighter tough enough to give Valentina Shevchenko a run for her money. So far, nobody's come close to stopping this wrecking ball, and with the UFC call-up all but inevitable, the question isn't if Dakota Ditchava will take over women's MMA, it's when. Gina Carano. If anyone could match Ditchava's beauty, it had to be Gina Carano during her time in the sport. And when it came to sheer violence, she was just as brutal as her Bulgarian-British counterpart. Just like Dakota, Gina Carano also used Muay Thai as a lethal weapon in the cage, dismantling her opponents in stand-up exchanges before the referee had seen enough. Some of her attempted homicides included a one-punch knockout of Rosie Sexton.
Oh! It's a big right. Beautiful right hand. 4 minutes and 54 seconds.
Depriving Tanya Evinger of oxygen.
Now she does. Gina should go for that choke. Is Evinger going to survive? Oh, it's over! Gina Carano submits Tanya Evinger!
And beating Caitlin Young so badly that the doctor had to step in mid-round to keep her from spending the night in the emergency room. Unfortunately for MMA fans, Gina capitalized on her charisma and good looks, chasing a career in acting where she turned out to be quite successful. Joanna Jędrzejczyk. When it comes to the women's strawweight division, the first name that comes to mind synonymous with this weight class is none other than Joanna Jędrzejczyk. There was a time when she seemed unbeatable, bulldozing through 14 opponents without remorse, and none of them had a real plan to stop her. She was the boogie woman of women's MMA, and her mind games worked to perfection. She would stare down her opponents before the fight and at weigh-ins, instilling fear before brutalizing them in the octagon. The scary thing about her fighting style was that she wasn't a one-punch knockout artist, but a volume striker who kept raining down punishment with relentless assaults until her opponents lost the will to fight. That's exactly what happened when she fought Carla Esparza and Jessica Penn. Joanna didn't let them off the hook until the referee stepped in for the rescue. This Polish warrior went on a dominant 14-fight winning streak until she Rose Namajunas. She's a stone-cold assassin who doesn't change her facial expression throughout the entire fight buildup. They call her Thug Rose, and that kind of nickname isn't asked for, it's earned. And by cracking chins and shattering dreams. As you already know, there was a time when Joanna Jędrzejczyk reigned supreme in women's MMA, but the first woman to create the blueprint for defeating the Polish champion was Thug Rose. As usual, Joanna tried her intimidation tactics against Namajunas. They simply didn't work. Once the octagon door closed, Rose launched an assault, dropping the Polish champion to the canvas. The subsequent onslaught crushed any hopes of a comeback, and poor Joanna tapped to punches.
She was doing a great job of feint. That's it!
To cement her status as one of the most vicious knockout artists in the division, Rose Namajunas channeled her inner Crow Cop and sent Zhang Weili straight to La La Land. But as every fairy tale has its end, for Rose it came in the form of a Brazilian powerhouse named Jessica. Jessica Andrade. Judging by her small stature, one might wonder, how can such a minion generate so much power in her hands? That's the same question many lifeless bodies ask themselves before Jessica Andrade shut their lights off. Karolina Kowalkiewicz is known as a striking virtuoso, outclassing opponents on the feet with her crisp kickboxing skills. But when she faced Andrade, the Brazilian showed her why you should never bring a knife to a gunfight. Devastating knockouts against Karolina. Andrade was matched against Rose Namajunas. What she did to her was straight out of a Hollywood action scene. And the size and height discrepancy Jessica faced against Caitlin Chukagian didn't stop her from cooking her liver Hannibal Lecter style.
Right hook to the bottom. A good stoppage from the referee.
At 33 years old, she still has the gas tank to produce jaw-dropping knockouts in the UFC. The only question is, who's next? Germaine de Randamie. Putting a woman in a men's sport like kickboxing usually leads to disaster. The result is almost always the same. The female fighter gets obliterated by the more muscular male. Simple biology. And then there's Germaine de Randamie, a woman who stepped into the ring with a man and knocked him out cold. If she could knock out a man, imagine the kind of trouble her female opponents were in every time they stepped into the octagon with her. Aspen Ladd was one of the few who learned the hard way that Germaine's striking is as deadly as a .44 Magnum shot. This Dutch kickboxer won the UFC belt by edging out Holly Holm on the judges' scorecards. Some of her most notable beatdowns include TKO victories over Larissa Pacheco and Anna Elmos, as well as a textbook guillotine choke win against Juliana Pena.
Out, there's a guillotine.
That looks very tight.
De Randamie, she's out. De Randamie ends it by submission.
I tell everybody, if you give me your neck, I'll put you to sleep. Still the number one.
Ronda Rousey. Love her or hate her, she's the only female competitor with a 100% finishing rate, something unheard of in women's MMA. Ronda's style was always the same, dispatching her opponents faster than an anchor dropping to the ocean floor. There was a time when talking to Dana White about including women in the UFC was like offering a devoted Muslim a beer.
When are we going to see women in the UFC, man?
Never.
Never?
When he met Ronda Rousey, her sheer brutality changed his mind, leading to the creation of the women's division in the organization. While her go-to move was snatching opponents' arms for submissions, she also had a few brutal knockouts on her resume. The body shot against Sarah McMahon was a thing of beauty. The way she gave spectators just 16 seconds of action before brutally finishing Alexis Davis was pure gold. And of course, sending Beth Correa on a blind date with a canvas was poetic justice.
Grinding with the knee now. Petchko has big trouble.
Considering how much the Brazilian trash-talked Rousey leading up to the bout. Ronda retired in 2016, but her impact on women's MMA can never be replicated. Valentina Shevchenko. They call her the Bullet. There's a reason behind that nickname. When Valentina Shevchenko was just 12, she knocked out a 22-year-old opponent, prompting her coach Pavel Fedotov to dub her the Bullet, a fitting name for someone whose speed in the ring was nothing short of lethal. Shevchenko's arguably the greatest flyweight champion of all time, a title she earned through sheer dominance and a ruthless approach in the octagon. One of the most brutal, hard-to-watch beatdowns in UFC history came when she faced Priscila Cachoeira. The poor Brazilian was shot more times than 50 Cent, as Shevchenko mercilessly picked her apart before sealing the deal with a submission by the end of the second round.
Flyweight division. Say hello to your worst nightmare.
But perhaps her most iconic performance was against Jessica Ai, where Valentina crow-copped her into oblivion. As Ai lay unconscious, even Joe Rogan had to admit Valentina's an assassin. Another savage display came against Caitlin Chukagian, who found herself trapped in a crucifix as Valentina rained down elbows to close the show in the third round.
Right here, and it may very well be.
Oh, that's it! It's still the undisputed.
She didn't stop there. Jessica Andrade and Lauren Murphy both got personally introduced to Valentina's hellish elbows, suffering TKO losses for their troubles. Even in 2025, Shevchenko still reigns supreme as the undisputed queen of the flyweight division, a champion whose dominance remains unmatched. Cris Cyborg. No female fighter comes close to the relentless pressure and sheer onslaught of strikes that Cris Cyborg brings to the table. With 21 knockouts and 28 victories, it's crystal clear this Brazilian powerhouse isn't interested in taking prisoners. Every one of her fights follows the same destructive pattern. The bell rings, Cyborg charges forward, unleashing a barrage of strikes until the referee's forced to step in before her opponent leaves the cage on a stretcher. Cyborg never hesitated to throw herself into a slugfest, never shying away from a good old-fashioned brawl. The problem? None of her opponents were skilled enough to stand and trade with her. She was so confident in her power that she'd storm in without a bulletproof vest or a helmet, unloading bomb after bomb and leaving nothing but rubble behind. But fighting like a wrecking machine comes with its risks, and in the last 20 years, only one woman managed to stop this warpath: Amanda Nunes. While everyone else feared standing and banging with Cyborg, Amanda Nunes didn't back down. She stood her ground and returned with fire. Just like that, an all-out war broke out. When the dust settled, it was Amanda's firepower that proved to be bigger, sending her Brazilian colleagues straight to oblivion. But that wasn't the first, nor the last time Amanda Nunes destroyed a goat. She beat Valentina Shevchenko twice, then massacred Ronda Rousey on the feet in less than a minute. Nunes wasn't just a knockout artist, as she possessed a decent grappling toolbox too. And while Holly Holm is known as one of the best strikers in the UFC, Amanda high-kicked her to another dimension, once again showing the massive gap between her and the rest of the contenders. Amanda Nunes retired as a champion, and it's hard to deny that she earned her spot as the GOAT in women's MMA. And with that, she cemented herself as one of the most brutal female fighters to ever step foot inside the octagon. And who do you consider the most merciless competitor in women's MMA, fight fans? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more MMA content like this.